ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This week, we are finally discussing the much anticipated comic book superhero adaptation, The Batman.
Hey, but before we talk The Batman, if you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, just go ahead and hit that button, ding that bell so you never, ever miss a video. And just as a reminder and a warning, Deep Dive Movie Reviews does contain spoilers, and we are talking The Batman. You may not want spoilers. James, let's talk about The Batman.
All right, let's do this. Yeah, I want to clarify my earlier statement. As you may or may not know, Steve and I are based in Hong Kong, where we have only just had our cinemas reopening in the past few days. They've been closed all year, which has been incredibly frustrating. And we've seen The Batman and many other films open all over the world, and we've just had to sit here twiddling our thumbs, waiting patiently. And then sort of the same week that it does open, it also opens on HBO Max. So suffice to say,
that's all we can say. Yeah.
You know, we just have to suck it up, unfortunately. And
but the good news is cinemas are open again.
They are. And so we're going to be covering obviously a lot more of the new releases throughout the summer, which is going to be great. So The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, is a reboot of the DC superhero character. So anything that you've seen from Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher, whomever, this is new. This is a whole new take, and I'm going to come right out the bat and say that I think that this is the most faithful to the comics adaptation of Batman that we have seen so far. And I'm going to just come out and say it, I loved it.
Yeah.
So
no holding back for the end.
I just want to, you know,
yeah.
I want to get that bit out of the way quickly. I thought this was great. I really did. I was anticipating it. I was looking forward to it. I'm not, if I'm completely honest, I'm not a huge comic book guy, but I do like Batman. I do read the Batman comics, not religiously, but it's the one character that I have over the years just kind of sort of fallen into, and I do have, you know, a fair knowledge of its background in the comic books, and I've read some of the big titles as we go through. But like compared with Marvel stuff, you know, I haven't really read any of that stuff. So I would say that Batman is my favorite superhero character, my favorite comic book character. Just to get all of that out of the way as well. So Matt Reeves, who we know from mainly from the Planet of the Apes sequels, he did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, and he did the remake of Let Me In, remake of the Swedish movie Let the Right One In, and Cloverfield was his big debut. He sort of took up the broken pieces of what was going to be a Ben Affleck Batman movie, after Ben Affleck had signed on to play the character in Batman vs Superman and Justice League, etc. He took on that project originally after Ben Affleck decided he wasn't going to direct it himself, but was still going to star in it. And then over the years, in basically the fallout of Justice League and all the personal hits that Ben Affleck took in the aftermath of all of that, you know, he had a divorce and went to rehab for his alcoholism and all of those. He stepped away, and so Matt Reeves took that opportunity to say, well, you know what, I like that script, but I'm going to scrap that and I'm going to start again. And what I want to do is something that highlights far more the detective side of Batman, because Batman is many things, right? He's the Caped Crusader, he's the Dark Knight, he's all of these other things, but he is also the world's greatest detective,
right?
And I think
detective comics, that was what yeah, you know,
this is absolutely,
you're right. Often that part of his identity has been overlooked in past film renditions,
right? And so what Matt Reeves says is that that's what he wanted to focus on. He wanted to do something that felt real. You know, you kind of hear this stuff a lot. It's like when Bond girls say, well, my character's, you know, she's much smarter and feistier than your typical Bond. Everyone who like sort of takes up the Batman sort of says, oh, mine's going to be far darker and more grounded in reality and all these kind of things. But I think that this is genuinely, legitimately the case here. This feels like the real world, and that there is just a guy walking around it in a slightly odd costume. You know, Reeves has cited 70s crime movies like The French Connection and The Godfather even, and Taxi Driver, and you can really see those elements in playing like the mood and the tone of the film. Also David Fincher, I think. There's a lot of, obviously the Zodiac is in there, but I think really it follows Seven probably more closer than any other movie. You know, it's a film about the cops and Batman on the trail of a serial killer who leaves these kind of elaborate, very carefully, precisely designed murder scenes. You know, it's all about the aftermath of these crimes and the clues that he's left deliberately there for specifically the Batman to investigate. So, Steve, I'm prattling on. So why don't you jump in now? What do you think of the Batman?
No, that was all good. And I mostly agree with you. I think James, maybe the last couple film reviews we've done have been movies that I was more emotionally invested in and you liked, but maybe not to the degree that I did. And I think now our roles are going to be reversed.
Okay.
I really thoroughly enjoyed this film, but I'm going to say I obviously, or not obviously yet, but I did not like it to the degree that you did for some of the reasons I'll state. But I did like the idea of exploring the detective nature. I love the whole Seven, Zodiac. I was even seeing some echoes of Silence of the Lambs, as well as Michael Mann's Manhunter, even more Manhunter. I was getting that William Peterson, I have to send someone who's psychologically imbalanced to catch somebody who's psychologically imbalanced and who's walking the edge of his own sanity, which is something that I think Robert Pattinson's Batman in this rendition is definitely walking. On the other hand, I also find that the constant desire to go darker and darker and darker. I mean, now I look back at Tim Burton's 1989, the first one who was that was going to come out and say, we're not going to be the 60s camp. We're going to be real. And now when I look back at Jack Nicholson's Joker, when I look back at the Prince soundtrack, when I look back at Michael Keaton's Batman, that all looks more like the 60s version compared to what we have now, that has gotten so dark that I think it's actually not real anymore. To me, Gotham is a parody of a city in duress. Like, there's nothing that works in this city. The whole, the whole police force is on the take. It's not like we have one or two bad apples. We have one or two good apples in this. And it almost made me think of LA Confidential, where the whole police force actually begins to take over the organized crime in the city. And so it just veered into too unrealistic for me. Having said that, it's a comic book movie. So the first 2/3 of the film, I was really engaged with it. It's a little darker than I'm used to, but I love the whole riddles, the whole cat and mouse game that the Riddler and Batman are playing. So I thoroughly engaged with that. I thought the last third of the movie became underwhelming for me. Once we got to where he was going to blow up the seawalls, and I'm thinking, the flooding, but I don't see how that. I see how that's hurting the city a bit, and it's going to piss a lot of people off. But I don't see this grand. We're going to change the whole. To me, those dots didn't connect for me, and so I ended this film less excited than I was halfway through it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I can see those criticisms. I mean, for me, let's get this out of the way very quickly. It's very long. It's 3 hours long. It's very long. For me, I felt it was paced actually pretty well.
Yeah.
So it didn't kind of like dip and lag and all of that kind of thing for me. You know, the way that a lot of films, we've complained about 2-hour movies that needed to be shorter.
Yes.
I'd be hard pushed to have to make the decision of what to remove from this. I will concede, in the third act, particularly then after the Riddler's been caught, and then this plan to blow the seawalls and flood the city, to essentially be like Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver and be the rain that washes the streets of the city clean. Felt to me that there was a shift in tone there slightly, but it also felt like, okay, well, yeah, like you said, this is a comic book movie, and this is where I think those obligations start to take priority over whatever Matt Reeves wanted to do in terms of making this a sort of homage to 70s detective movies,
Right,
or what have you.
right.
So it just felt like a sort of a shift in gears, but one that is part and parcel for the genre, I suppose.
I agree with you that despite the length, and it is long, as we said, it's paced well, except there were a couple scenes that I thought were a little bloated and a little long. There's a car chase scene with the Batmobile in it that seems to go on forever. And I found myself, okay, now's when I can go make a toilet break, because you're in a 3-hour film. And I'll be the first to concede, nothing bores me more than a car chase. I have watched every car chase, since the 70s, and I can name 3. Like, every time I say this, I am corrected by seeing something which is, I feel, truly amazing. The first 6 minutes of Baby Driver, I was sorely corrected. I thought that was one of the most amazing opening car chase scenes I'd ever seen. And Mad Max Fury Road. When I heard it was going to be one long car chase, I'm thinking, oh, what are they going to do to Mad Max? Of course, you got to have cars, but a movie that is just one long car chase, and I stood corrected. That was just an amazing piece of film. And this is a small critique, but I just got bored. I just thought, oh, wow, here's 5 minutes we could have shaved off of this, because I just found it went from the cat and mouse psychological battle. It's almost as if you're watching Seven or watching Manhunter or Silence of the Lambs. And in the midst of the psychological chess game that's going on, we throw in a car chase. And it just, for me, it breaks the momentum of what I'm actually engaged in. Oh, it's like, oh, call me when they're back to the cat and mouse riddles again, because I don't really need the car chase right now.
I think I can hear the hearts of stunt crews around the world breaking simultaneously now, because I think what you said about the car chase being the boring bit. Yeah, I think in so many movies the car chase is the bit thrown in to get you excited and to really sort of grab the audience and hold the audience. I like the car chase in this. I thought it was filmed quite innovatively. I like the way that they put the cameras kind of on the bonnet and on the vehicles, and so you're getting this kind of perspective that feels more like you're in the car chase, like you're in the vehicles and you're there, as opposed to kind of sort of aerial shots or these impossible angles that you might get in sort of a Fast and Furious movie or something like that. I appreciated that kind of intensity and that immediacy that you got from it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to besmirch the technical aspects of it. This is purely a personal, it's for, like, some people don't like sports and you just don't get it. I just tune out whenever a car chase starts up. I do. I'm like, I totally zone out, because I guess because
you tune out rather than tune up.
Right. I'm a dialogue person. I love, and this is going to segue into one of the other minor critiques I have in this film, is I think Robert Pattinson is a up and coming brilliant actor. When I heard he was going to be Batman, there's another area where I stood corrected. I thought he was just the Twilight pretty boy guy. And then I saw him in Tenet, and I've seen him subsequently in a couple other films. And I just thought, wow, this guy has some serious acting chops. So when it was announced he was going to be Batman, I thought, brilliant. This guy will really pull it across or do well in it. And what I found was there was no great interactions of sophisticated dialogue, because Robert Pattinson's Batman is so broken and disorientated in his psyche. Everything is like, you betrayed me, you lied. I miss the Michael Keaton playboy. I understand what they're trying to do. This is Batman, very young, still processing the death of his father, still coming to terms with the legacy that he's inheriting. We even know from the beginning, this is really year 2 of his Gotham project, that this is something that he's concocted to enact vengeance. And I do love that vengeance gets transferred to hope in the end. And I'm looking forward to, in sequels, watching a more balanced Batman have engagement with people rather than grunting with people. I thought too much of Pattinson's acting was not on display because he was reduced to a two-dimensional, I can't, there's just the grunting and the stalking and there's hardly a full sentence that he actually gives. And I just think that it's missing that Bruce Wayne. One of the things I always loved about the Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne was how comfortable he was in his own skin. And I think that's why I always like the Robert Downey Iron Man, is he's comfortable in his own skin. And Batmans have been hit or miss with me because there's always this angst within them that I find frustrating to watch at times.
Oh, I think more than any other incarnation of Bruce Wayne, what Robert Pattinson does is show how uncomfortable he is within his own skin. You're right. It's like second year of his Gotham project, of being the Batman. He's still working out who Batman is going to be as a symbol, as a tool of vengeance. He's still working out what he wants to be and what he wants to represent. And I thought one of the great arcs of the film is how he essentially is how the film articulates that him and the Riddler are coming from the same place, or they're rather they're addressing the same problem, but let's say from opposite ends. They are both pissed off with the corruption in the city and take it upon themselves to do something about it. They even don a mask in order to protect their identity to do it. And they are willing to get their hands dirty. I think one of the great reveals or revelatory moments for the character is towards the end, during the big, arguably slightly superfluous action sequence in the stadium, where he's facing off against an army of sort of Riddler acolytes, and he rips the mask off one of them, and he's lying on the floor going, "I am vengeance. And he realizes, oh my God, I'm just as bad as these people. Or if I'm not careful, I will be just as bad as these people. That's when he has the moment where he's like, I need to really address who I want to be for these people and who I want to be for the city. And where he takes this turn and decides, okay, I need to be a bastion of hope rather than of fear. Because he had been, motivated by yes, I need to be something scary, right, that the criminal element will fear me. And it's like, well, sure, yeah, but you're scaring everybody, and you're just as bad as the Riddler and all these other characters if you continue to do that. You're talking about the sort of the voice, if you like, the voice of the character. And one thing I really liked about this film is it's the first Batman movie that has a voiceover, that has a narration coming from Bruce Wayne. Now, if you've read any of the comics ever, and it's the comics been going since the 1930s, Batman narrates the comics a lot. I don't know what percentage, but it's a lot. It's always like, oh, this is my city. I have got this thing to do. And so to actually see that up on screen for the first time, I was like, oh, it immediately sort of evoked the sensibility of the comic books, where you're there along for the ride with him, you feel his pain, and he is really talking through what he's doing and why he's doing it to the audience, to the reader. And it wasn't until I saw it in the movie, I was like, why have they never done this before? And I guess it's difficult,
Yeah, and I feel like I've been a little too critical of this to juxtapose it to your praise, but I did enjoy this film. And right at the beginning, that voice narration I thought was beautiful when he talks about, I can't be everywhere, but I can instill fear in the shadows. Because they don't know when they see that bat signal, if I'm going to be the one walking out of the shadows or not. And I love how they go from the different robberies and crimes that are happening, and something will be in the shadow and a person doesn't want to go near that shadow. And
I love the guy's pumpkin head thing.
That was no. There's parts of this movie that I thought were brilliant, and I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, there's just a lot of it. I think what I always like about Batman compared with other comic book heroes is the kind of theatricality of it. The fact that it is slightly odd. All of these characters are just a bit off kilter. You know, even your hero. I mean, there's a certain nobility to being a superhero that obviously Superman personifies, and a lot of characters in the Marvel universe. But Batman's not a particularly sympathetic guy, really.
No.
You know, he comes from, yes, he's had tragedy in his life, but he comes from great wealth, and that often sets him at odds with kind of the audience. I remember in The Dark Knight Rises, where sort of Bane's whole thing was about, taking down the 1% and, robbing the rich to feed the poor. And you kind of sit there going, yeah, kind of, you're going about it the wrong way, but I'm with you on this one. And obviously Bruce Wayne is one of these great characters, and they address it again here. Mm-hmm. And I think they do an interesting way of dealing with it by having Bruce Wayne sort of uncomfortable with his wealth, almost rejecting his wealth, and doesn't really know what to do with it yet.
Well, it just makes you think of the interaction that Paul Dano, the Riddler, has with him when he explains, hey, you know what? We're both orphans, but I was in this shitty orphanage where there was no heat. The rats would nibble at my fingers at night. There was no food. You know, we struggled each and every day, but all you see in the newspapers is poor little Bruce Wayne. He's the orphan. This millionaire kid will never want for anything, will never have rats nibbling on his toes at night, will never be put into the conditions that Paul Dano's character has been subjected to. And it just made me think about the social critique that we could see around the world, that we can see a lot of, speaking as American, we could see a lot of police violence against or tragedies happen to minority people in America. But if it happens to a white woman, suddenly it'll be the headline. There can be wars and tragedy and famines all over Africa or Southeast Asia. But when there's war in Europe, that suddenly gets everybody. And I felt that there was that same kind of critique. Hey, we're both the same, but don't think for a moment we're the same, because what I've had to experience, when I experience it, I'm ignored. When you experience it, the whole world gets behind you.
Yeah, I think it's just another element where in which the film sort of shows these two characters in parallel. And I think that, the main thrust of that, I think, is for it to hit home to Bruce Wayne just how careful he needs to be in what he's doing. His vigilantism can very quickly deteriorate into something far more dangerous and less heroic than he wants it to be. And he just has to be very sort of careful about and take some responsibility for his actions and for the image that he's projecting and all the rest of it. And I think that's always been a fascinating facet of Batman and his sort of rogues gallery of villains. Like in a lot of the Marvel comic books, the villains are kind of, they're either aliens or they're robots, or they have suffered some sort of medical experiment or something. Whereas I think by and large, Batman and his enemies, they're just crazy. They're just kind of wacky, crazy, slightly oddball caricatures. And I kind of love all of that. And it's what makes the property very difficult to ground it in reality. Because they're all sort of
psychotic.
They're psychotic, and they're kind of sort of circus acts almost.
Right. Yes.
There is an innate detachment from reality, both internally and externally, with characters like the Riddler and the Joker and the Penguin and what have you. And if you're going to do them faithfully, the reality is a very tenuous concept, or realism is a very tenuous concept, should I say?
Well, James, let me ask you about, let's rounding out the cast. What do you think of Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, Andy Serkis's Alfred, Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon? What were your impressions there? Okay. I
mean, I love Zoe Kravitz. I've been a big fan of her for a while. Her sort of gender flipped reinterpretation of High Fidelity, the TV show. If you saw that, it's
I
great.
Want to
She's
see.
wonderful.
I heard it's great, and I'm a big High Fidelity, the John Cusack film, so I've been wanting to see that.
Well, that's it. I read the book, Nick Hornby book, saw the film, and there was outrage in England that they even made it American. Here they in the series they make
God
it American.
forbid. God forbid.
Oh, I know. But it's a good movie. And in the TV show, they make it American and they flip the gender so that she's a girl. And I think she's great. You know, it's scary how much like her parents, Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet, she is. And I had a big crush on Lisa Bonet back in. Are we even allowed to talk about the Cosby Show anymore? I'm not sure that
I don't know. Yeah, that's might be.
But she was the the sexy teenage sister
Yes.
who just like, oh wow. And then Angel Heart and movies like that. I love it. And Zoe Kravitz seems to have completely embodied all of those sort of awesome attributes from both her parents. And she's really talented as well.
Very
she's
much
really good.
To me, Lenny Kravitz like radiates cool out to 15 feet. He just has a cone of cool around him, and she seems to have inherited that. She's not just easy on the eyes, which of course she is, but she is just a charismatic figure, and I thought she pulled off Catwoman beautifully.
Yeah, because she's got this. There is a kind of sort of inherent feline quality to the way she looks and the way she kind of moves, and I think she leaned into that quite deliberately. It's almost ridiculously perfect casting in a way, and I like that they didn't lean too heavily into her actually sort of becoming a cat, if you know what I mean.
I like that, almost what they did with the Michelle Pfeiffer version, where she's that was a little weird. I liked where in fact they just had that throwaway line where he goes, "You seem to like cats, I like strays." Beautiful line, just sets the tone of what it is, but doesn't go on a deep dive into why she has a cat brain or something.
Yeah, because that's what I like about this film, is that it acknowledges that everybody coming to a Batman movie has at least a cursory knowledge of Batman. It doesn't bother really with an origin story again, and I'm glad, because it's been done to death. And I know in the comics they do go over and over it again. It does pop up at the beginning of most stories, but you don't need it. We all know what happened, and that's fine. And again, you've got Catwoman, and you get it. She's a cat burglar, and and she sort of can hold her own, really, and that's as far as you need to go with that. She has the little balaclava with kind of pointy ears at one point. That's like, that's cool. That's not like she's gone out of her way to create a Catwoman costume for herself
or a cat persona.
Exactly. It's it fits in with her idea of being sort of a cat burglar, and it's just got a cute little pair of ears on it. And I think that extends to sort of Batman's costume as well, is that it feels like something that you could make. It feels kind of that it's made out of sort of military. It's
body
riot
armor,
body armor or riot gear or something like that. So that he could cobble together. There is a kind of emblem, but it serves a practical purpose. He's got these kind of cutters tools. Who else did you talk about? Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon, not yet Commissioner Gordon. Jeffrey Wright is a great actor. It's kind of like a Felix Leiter kind of role as well. I felt I think generally he's pretty good. He's the one good cop. He's Serpico or whatever. He's the one good cop in a bad town, and he's making this big gamble by bringing Batman into these crime scenes, and that gets him a lot of very dodgy looks from his peers. And I think he does all of that really well. And I think it's a great character, because it's very hard to be a good guy in these kind of roles. I did find his dialogue, he does seem to have been burdened with the character who points out the obvious over and over and over again during the film. He literally has the one line of dialogue that sort of says, so this guy's leaving riddles for you, Batman. After you've just had a whole scene of them working at these. And there was 3 or 4 times where he says something that you're like, yeah, I know. We've just spent 10 minutes seeing that. Which was
the movie's long enough already without having to regurgitate things.
Yeah. And who else have we got? We got Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
And who's hardly recognizable under all that makeup.
I mean, I did know ahead of time that it was him, and I think I want more Penguin, and I want Penguin to be more penguiny. But I believe that is this is just sort of setting that up.
I did like when they had him in the leg chains. Then he started to waddle, and he had that whole penguin thing going. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, but for the time being, he's just a kind of nasty, no good gangster type, which is fine. Everyone has to have their origins and start somewhere.
I thought Andy Serkis's Alfred brought real gravitas to the role, and I love that there is an initial. They don't yet have the bond that they will come to have, and I thought Andy Serkis did a great job of being able to show his loyalty to the family, even above when Bruce is going to act like a bit of an ass occasionally. And I love the one scene where he gives him the cufflinks, and it's got the Wayne insignia on it. And Bruce kind of off the cuff just says, almost accusingly, "Oh, do you think of yourself a Wayne?" or something like that. And he just puts him right in his place. So, "Your father gave me these as a gift." And you can see Bruce like, "Okay, I'm going to go with my tail between my legs now." So to me, Andy Serkis brought that level of mentorship and that gravitas that is needed for this role. And that's one of the things I did enjoy about the film is when he's obviously blown up he takes the hit for Bruce. Bruce confronts him about finding out his father is maybe not the Boy Scout that he thought he was. And of course, Andy Serkis sets him straight. And that's the good thing about this film is, sometimes in movies, there's good guys and there's bad guys. This is showing, even good guys are not always good. Bad guys are not always bad. And, these are some of the realities that we live in. Yet your dad was still a good man, even though in a time of pressure, maybe he made a bad choice. And I love those kind of moral dilemmas. Those are the kind of things in the film I enjoy, not the car chases.
No, absolutely. And again, it's a great part of the Batman character is that, he is inherently flawed, and that, his actions are, particularly in these early years, in this incarnation of Batman, he hasn't figured out how to do it yet, or even exactly what he wants to do. He makes mistakes, sometimes quite painful ones. The bit where he sort of skydives down and then gets caught under the bridge, and I did sort of squirm in my seat there quite audibly. But also, in sort of wider sweeping terms, I did like the fact that they brought that Bruce Wayne became the sort of the last target, if you like.
Right.
That all kind of fit quite nicely, and that Thomas Wayne wasn't as squeaky clean, because I can't remember an incarnation of Thomas Wayne where we've really seen him as anything other than sort of this white knight of Gotham. This is a great provider who was just cut down in his prime.
Right.
And in a way, it was kind of reassuring to humanize him a little bit, but then he just turned to the wrong person and was paid the price for it, for trusting Carmine Falcone.
That's right. John Turturro, obviously another great actor who made his appearance in this film.
And it's great seeing Turturro play like a full-on villain, because he's quite often sort of these oddball, quirky characters. Yeah. But here he's just full-blown bad guy, and you're just like, okay, and he doesn't need a pseudonym or a persona.
Even when I was starting to think he's the bad guy with a good heart, then I found, oh no, you're just a bad guy. Like, actually, that wasn't a good heart at all. I thought there was some redemption there, but no, there wasn't.
No, not at all. Not at all. So we know that this is going to be a trilogy. They've sort of said up front, we're going to do 3 of these, and I think Matt Reeves and Pattinson. I think Penguin's coming back. I know there's going to be a TV show of Penguin as well, spinning off now.
Okay,
but a few of the other characters, probably Andy Serkis, I would imagine, and Jeffrey Wright, have definitely signed up to do 3. So how, as somebody who didn't flat out, love it, how do you feel that this works as a foundation for what's to come? And how do you feel about, 2 more movies of this type coming up?
To be honest, I love where they're going, and I have a lot of optimism for the next couple films. I'm going to enjoy them. I like Robert Pattinson. I like Jeffrey Wright. I like Andy Serkis. I like to see this team go, and I'm looking forward to seeing the maturity and development of the character. I said earlier, what I really enjoyed at the end of the film, despite being disappointed with the last third, was his acknowledging in his narration that he can't be just a force for vengeance. He has to be a force for hope and inspiration of hope. And so to seeing the maturity of the character would be something that I'm looking forward to happening. Having said that, after seeing the Nolan Batmans and now the Reeves Batmans, I'm thinking we're having our fair share of the dark, gritty Batman, which I enjoy. Now I'd almost want, when this is over, or as a side tangent, can we do a 3-series arc where we go back to 1960s, where we actually have a cool Batmobile? Because I haven't been impressed with any Batmobile in any film since the 60s. I know I'm showing my age, but I don't need a military all-terrain vehicle. I need something that is 60s chic, man. Something that when it goes down the road, it is when I compare that Batmobile from Adam West to any other Batmobile, I'll take that hands down. I would love to see a Batman with humor in it again. We don't have to necessarily go all camp, but even the Keaton Batmans, there was a fun to it. Keaton could be fun. He could play his dark mood for a moment. But at the end of the day, and granted, that was a Batman who's a little bit older, who's got a little more worldly wise, more comfortable in his own skin. But I wouldn't mind to see an adventurous director say, okay, we've gone dark enough. We're going to bring it a little more campy. We're going to have a little more fun with Batman and see where that could go.
Yeah, it would be interesting for sure. Obviously, even people my age, I still grew up with the TV show. It was reruns on Saturday mornings, and that was still my first immersion into the character. And of course, it was very colorful and ridiculous and camp and all the rest of it. But in order to be that, they had to jettison so much of the lore,
right?
If you like, so much of the backstory. I don't think there's ever any mention of his parents being murdered in front of him or anything like that. He's just a rich guy with a young ward and a penchant for tight-fitting clothing. Who likes to climb walls and fight people in colorful studios. And I worry that the danger of going too light with it or too humorous with it is you end up with the Joel Schumacher movies again.
When you started talking, I was just going to qualify myself and say, but we don't do a Schumacher with any nipple suits. And let me ask you, what did you think of the Burton Batmans?
Oh, I loved them. I loved them. When I saw them, they were great, and I still hold them. I'm still very, very fond of them. They are Carnival-esque. Tim Burton has this kind of sense of artifice about his work. He never attempts to, certainly not with these films, ground them in any recognizable reality.
No.
Particularly in Batman Returns, it does feel, I know I've said this already, but it does feel like the circus. There are lots of, there are literally clowns sort of somersaulting around the place, blowing fire and all that, but nothing about it feels real,
right,
in any way, and it's got this whole Christmas thing going on. But it's also dark and gothic and nasty and grotesque in a way that Batman is.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, the level I'm looking for. I'm not saying to go back to the 60s version, but I liked a Michael Keaton that could sit across from a long table with Kim Basinger, and the joke of this long table like that, you just wouldn't have that in the Matt Reeves Batman. I love that kind of, when Michael Keaton goes and he meets Kim Basinger, and he's with the other reporter, and he's being very glib with them, and that kind of humor I'm missing from this Batman, the witty wisecracks, and of course that's not what this Batman's supposed to be. But I would love to go back to that Batman and see that film again, or a new film made. Yeah,
it would be interesting because I think we've gone as dark as, well, I mean, I'm sure they're about to prove me wrong, but it feels like we've gone as dark as we can without it just becoming completely depressing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And so uncommercial that the studio will just throw it out.
There's some pretty horrid deaths in this film.
There are, this, and I'm surprised because apparently it still did get a PG-13 rating. I think that was one of the very few.
No,
it was one of the very few studio restrictions. They gave Matt Reeves pretty much carte blanche to do what he wanted, and you feel that. But one of the things he said is that it had to come in at PG-13, and he believed it needed to be PG-13 as well. He was saying there is no sort of R-rated director's cut down in the basement of Warner Brothers anywhere. He's like, this is the movie, but it feels pretty tough. There's some pretty gnarly serial killer stuff going on there.
This is a macabre film in parts, and I would seriously question it being a PG-13.
Yeah, no, and I agree. It is, but I also agree that it's arguably it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just getting a bit too old and sensitive.
That's right. Two old men.
Exactly. But I think going forward, they need to. I mean, I really like the tone of this one, but I think it is about as dark and gritty and dour as you can get away with, without it just becoming so uncommercial that it loses money and kills the franchise for the opposite reasons that Batman and Robin killed the franchise 25 years ago. There may be some people that disagree with me that want it to go even darker, but I don't think that's a commercial reality, and I don't think
viable. Yeah,
right, and I don't think it's something that we should want from something that is supposed to be a big fun blockbuster movie. I think there is a way of balancing all those elements, and I think this does a really good job of that. I think it's grounded and it's serious, or it takes itself seriously enough, whilst it still does acknowledge that this is Batman, that is Catwoman. The Riddler is completely ridiculous in his own way, and he spawns an army of copycats, which reminded me very much of the ending of Joker.
Yes, I thought the same thing. Yeah,
almost too much. When it kind of happened, I was kind of like, oh, you're doing kind of exactly this again. Okay, well, it was good. So, and it's with a different character. So, okay, fine. Speaking of Joker, we should probably talk about that little bit at the end.
Yes,
when he's in the asylum, and the guy in the next cell, who isn't identified but is very clearly the Joker, sort of befriends him, and so you get the suggestion that they are going to plot something in going forward. I should point out, I think he filmed it. There was a scene in the script where you talked Manhunter, which was a direct reference to Manhunter, where Batman went to Arkham Asylum to talk to the Joker about how to catch the Riddler. In very much in a.
See, that would have been for me. That would have been dump the car chase and give me that. I mean, to me, Will Graham with Brian Cox and Manhunter. That 3-minute dialogue is some of the best. I'm tipping my hand that Brian Cox for me is Hannibal Lecter, as much as I revere.
Anthony Hopkins. Yes, I'm getting old, but I would have loved if they had that scene in that film. Well, fingers crossed it might pop up on the Blu-ray in the deleted scenes or something like that, because I'm pretty sure they shot it, and then he just decided, the film's long enough already, and it didn't really add anything, and pace-wise, it was.
Needed the Batmobile chase. Get rid of that. There's 10 minutes right there. Boom.
But that's how you sell popcorn,
Yeah, that's it.
Watching the car chases. So I hope we do get to see that, because that would see a little Barry Keoghan in all his glory as Joker. Because, and Matt Reeves has mentioned this as well, if they decide to do something with the Joker going forward, he's not in a position to be able to guarantee Barry Keoghan the role of the Joker, even if he wanted to do it. So he said, that's why I left it kind of out of focus and, unidentifiable, so that if needs must.
Mhm.
You know, if the studio say, sure, you can do a sequel with the Joker in it, but it has to be one of these A-listers, which it would be, is a very realistic possibility, whether you like it or not. I think Barry Keoghan would be great. He's an incredibly talented young actor. He's very unnerving in pretty much everything he does. He's in Dunkirk. He's in Killing of a Sacred Deer. He's in Eternals, and he's always the kind of the one that would kind of kill animals in his spare time. You know, there's something very odd about him.
Yes,
and
yes.
I think his incarnation of the Joker would be something.
He would be
quite
good.
special.
He has
if it happens.
He has that look. There's that look that just seems to lend itself to.
Yeah. Yes, he's a troubled boy. Yeah.
So James, wrapping this up and giving a final score to the Batman, what instrument should we use here?
Oh,
I was going to say collared bombs.
Collared bombs, or what's that carpeting tool that the Riddler uses?
You know, my dad was a carpet layer. I knew exactly what that tool was.
Oh, okay.
And when he started ripping up the rug, man, I thought, I've done that so many times when I was a kid growing up.
Or just batarangs.
Batarangs. Let's do batarangs. Make it.
Okay. It's got to be a bat gadget, hasn't it?
That's it. Let's make it bat-tific. Yeah.
Yes, fantastic.
Fantastic. That's better. So, James, how many batarangs would you give the Batman?
Okay, well, I think I've made my point quite clear. I thought this was great. I was very satisfied with the results. I'm a big Batman fan. I loved where he went with it. I love the fact that the studio let him go this way with it. I think it looked fantastic. Greg Fraser, who just won the Oscar for Dune for his cinematography, shot the hell out of it. I think it looks so kind of moody and murky and dingy. The score is incredibly immersive and propulsive. Michael Giacchino obviously is great. But can you imagine being given that job this far down the road where there are so many videos? It's like, come up with a new Batman theme. And you're like, seriously? You know, there are like 3 or 4 now that if anyone plays them out of context, you're like, oh, that's Batman. But he does come up with one. You know, and he hammers it home by using it every 5 minutes during this movie. But and it's very simple. It's just a simple kind of back and forth of a couple of notes. But I thought it was great. So I really like this film. It might even at this early stage be my favorite film of the year so far. Who knows how that's going to fare further down the line. I'm looking forward to watching it again in the cinema while we still have the chance. But I'm at this stage, I'm gonna go the full 5 batarangs out of 5.
Wow, you surprised me. I thought you were going to go 4.5. I thought.
Now, you know what? A little peek behind my own professional curtain. I've decided, whenever possible, I'm not going to do half stars anymore.
Oh,
in anything I do, just because I feel that I'm compromising myself. It's giving me a get out.
Yeah.
Feel free to use it.
Yeah. No. Now I feel gaslit because now I'm going to get you back with about the gaslit comment. I've just decided not to.
So I'm going full 5 batarangs out of 5. I thought it was great.
There you go. I'm going to employ my half-star compromise. And I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was a strong film. I thought Matt Reeves, his inaugural effort here was fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes in future installments. But there was just some elements that didn't work for me. So I'm not quite ready to give it 4. Maybe I'll come around to your way of thinking in the fullness of time and eliminate the halves. But I'm going to give this 3.5. Go see it. The Batman is a fantastic film.
Excellent. All right then. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave us a comment down below. What did you think of the Batman? Is it too dark? Is it too long? Is it the best incarnation of the Batman that we've seen on screen so far? Let us know. We want to hear from you in the comments down below.
Yeah, if you haven't subscribed, as I mentioned earlier, please hit that button. And if you want to reach out to James or I on social media, we are both on Instagram and Twitter, and you will find those links in the descriptions below. Until next episode, James.
Goodbye.
You ought to
Bye.
be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.